I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken Live, episode number 192, with no spin, no bias, and no censorship. Breaking right now, Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe continue to trade blows as Reform UK's under fire chairman, Zia Yusuf, who called the cops on the party's axed MP after he was endorsed by Elon Musk, breaking cover to find himself absolutely destroyed by Robert Peston on Woke ITV.
I thought Reform was supposed to be taking a different approach to politics, which was answering questions, and you specifically didn't answer my question. Would you back these cuts or not? Yes or no?
It didn't get much better during a new appearance with Julia Hartley-Brewer on Talk. I will show you. And look, it's why, Mr. Yusuf, you should come on Outspoken. Answer some real questions that your supporters deserve to have resolved. But I have to say, what he went through was nothing compared to the roasting dished out to Sly News by Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Secretary and the Vice.
Wait, what country are you
from? The UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
Okay, do you care?
No. You should care about your own border.
It's so good. I'm going to show you that full exchange. But in my digest next, I'm going to take you through the Zia Yusuf comeback and Rupert Lowe's response. Then I'm joined by UKIP leader Nick Tenconi. Is this the time for Farage's former party to rise up? Also coming up on the show today, should Bonnie Blue and Lily Phillips be arrested and sectioned for their degenerate behaviour? And the first interview with Reverend Canon Phil Harris, the priest cancelled for daring to challenge Slippery Starmer over his Southport Massacre cover-up. Then in the Uncancelled Aftershow on Substack, Lady Colin Campbell unleashed on the major new royal scandals involving Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. You can sign up to watch www.outspoken.live. At the end of the show, I will also reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. They're always chosen by you. The nominees for Union Jackass, by the way, are here, and you can vote in our live chat on YouTube. So there they are. Nominee 1, David Holdsworth. He is the Chief Executive of the Charity Commission, nominated by Rose Juni for sacking Father Phil and insinuating he is some sort of far-right thug. You've probably never heard of this guy, David Holdsworth, but once you hear Father Phil's story, you'll be very annoyed, I am sure. Shabnam Mahmood, nominated by It's Only Me 44, the Justice Secretary, for softer laws on migrant criminals so the migrants could avoid deportation. And a woman after my own heart at JFDTA, Meghan Markle, for her inane posting on Instagram, including the Gwyneth Paltrow stump, which, by the way, Lady Colin Campbell later in the after show will reveal how this whole thing was just a total setup. But now, let's go. As the opinion polls show a devastating halt to Reform UK's once unstoppable momentum after the decision to report Rupert Lowe to the police, Nigel Farage wants us to believe this is still a straightforward battle between his party and the Conservatives.
As you can see, the sun is going down in spectacular style on a Conservative-led Lincolnshire, and the new dawn is going to be Reform. It's a bit corny, but it works.
But I would argue that while there is still widespread revulsion at the Tories' 14-year betrayal, there is now equal consternation about whether Reform has betrayed us. You know, that lot, us lot. Or are we now the online right, whatever that means? That's not how we view ourselves, of course. We know that we're just ordinary folk who love this country. We are patriots who are well aware that dramatic action is required to save the Britain we love, and playing by the old rules, doing things like ruling out mass deportation simply isn't going to cut it. I have also picked up serious concerns from you about how a political novice in the form of businessman Zia Yusuf, a former Tory, has succeeded in tearing the heart out of the party given the defenestration of Rupert Lowe. Now, after disappearing from the MSM while the scandal grew over the past month, Yusuf has now returned to where he feels most comfortable, the legacy media. He doesn't like doing the independent media. I've asked him on. He's never turned up. And of course, entering that legacy media den means he was predictably monstered by Robert Peston during a mortifying on-air fight at Woke ITV.
All of these points are moot because all of these things have to be paid for. And we cannot pay for those things with energy prices where they are. There are no examples of economies in the world that are growing fast with energy prices where they are now. British people pay more for their electricity and their energy than any other country in the world, and that's why we have no growth.
I thought reform was supposed to be taking a different approach to politics, which was answering questions, and you specifically didn't answer my question. Would you back these cuts or not? Yes or no?
We need to reduce government spending, but the most important thing is
Nobody knows is the answer. I think you've made your point about the bigger cuts and the bigger changes you want to see to growth. You didn't answer the question. I am delighted to be joined.
Of course, he was delighted to be joined by a Labour politician because that's the person who Woke ITV loves to platform. It's why you should come on Outspoken, Mr. Yusuf. Answer some real questions that your supporters want to know and actually deserve to know where you stand. And you know me, I'll do it very respectfully. I don't play gotcha games. But I'll tell you right now, I need to know why you reported Rupert Lowe to the police for hurty words during an argument. Is that really the sort of nonsense the overstretched and failing Met should be dealing with? Could you not have sorted it out like men? And why on earth did you release early this KC report into Lowe's office while doxing his members of staff, one of whom I can reveal is pregnant and has now had to go off work altogether? Really dealing with mental health issues as a result of this. Now, Lowe put it this way today, writing 3 of the 4 staff publicly shamed by reform with zero evidence were not contacted. They were not even given the chance to respond to these vile allegations. It is not proper process. Parliamentary authorities and separate legal teams are now involved. Evil behaviour. Basil the Great, who's one of those great accounts on X, updated the situation by writing 4 of Rupert Lowe's staff have referred Nigel Farage and Lee Anderson to Parliament's Independent Complaints and Grievance Scheme. This follows the early release for KC report, which publicly named individuals and allegations against them. Reform are a complete mess. Now, at least Julia Hartley-Brewer on Talk did try to get an answer on that from Zia Yusuf in the past hours.
Why did you publish the report ahead of when the KC had agreed it would be published?
So, Julia, the report that
or is
came
she
out,
lying?
we've published the report in the interests of full transparency. People can go read it, and the conclusions are as you just described. The parties acted entirely properly throughout this process. It's obviously not been pleasant at all. It's not something that Lee Anderson nor I enjoyed at all. It's been an unpleasant episode. As far as we're concerned now, this is the KC investigation has been completed, and people can go and read the report for themselves.
But why did you release the report ahead of when the KC expected the report to be released?
We didn't. We did not do that.
So she's lying.
Now, I know for a fact, and just take my words for this, I know for a fact that the KC is horrified and mortified by the release of the report. But Yusuf still wouldn't give Julia a straight answer.
She thought it was released before it was supposed to be released. Why would you do that?
What I will say is this. The report has been published. It is clear for everybody to see.
So you're not denying that, then?
I am absolutely denying.
So she knew it was going to be released then.
That we've acted in any way improperly in terms of when we published the report. But
no, but she says that the claim is that she had given Rupert Lowe and his legal team until Wednesday to respond, and then the report was published on the Tuesday, so he didn't have time to respond.
Julia, number one, Mr. Lowe himself declared on social media last week that he would not be cooperating with the investigation.
Why not wait the extra day?
Secondly, and this is the last comment I'll make on this because the report is there for everybody to read. The second point is that he had a solicitor engaging with the independent KC, and that solicitor also confirmed that Mr. Lowe would not be responding prior to that deadline. So I absolutely deny that the parties acted in any way improperly or jumped the gun. We've acted entirely properly throughout this process.
So once that issue was covered, Julia, who, just got to be honest with you, she is a big Nigel Farage supporter. She seems to think that Rupert Lowe belongs to the so-called online right, returned to give Zia Yusuf a relatively easy ride.
Are you glad to be rid of him?
Look, it's been a really unpleasant experience, Julie. It's not something that anyone in any political party, I think, wants to go through, but we're now focused on the future. We've got over 1,600 brilliant candidates who are going to be standing for council for reform ahead of the May the 1st elections. And we've got Sarah Pochin, who has been a magistrate for 2 decades, who will be running to become the next member of parliament for Runcorn and Hull.
Other candidates obviously will be... Other candidates will...
She even gave Yusuf the chance to cry racism over the criticism of his decision to try and get his best performing MP locked up.
Out your race and your religion as being an issue. What did you make of those? I can't believe you haven't seen those huge numbers of messages concerning those factors about you.
Yeah, look, if you go into politics on the front line, Julia, you know what you're getting yourself into. It is a rough old game and you've got to have a thick skin. We're more determined than ever to ensure that Reform wins the next general election. We've made huge progress since the general government, 14% in the polls, 26% in the average. We've added 160,000 new members, and that's continuing to rise. You can see that on our ticker online in the last 8 months. So that's what we're focused on. And listen, of course, you see all sorts of things, crazy things going on Twitter. We're not letting any of that stuff distract us.
But this mess, and it is a mess, is distracting. Let's just be honest about it. It is distracting from the true horror being inflicted on the United Kingdom, illustrated by this video. I played it to you yesterday. I want you to look at it again, though, because it is just so shocking, of Paddington in London. Now, this was posted by Turning Point UK, and I just can't get it out of my head. That is literally just around the corner from the GB News studio. Sadly, it does now seem that it is often the MSM overseas doing the job of our cucked and controlled legacy media. I want you to watch this shocking but very revealing interview between Peter Credlin of Sky News Australia and the Emirati national Obaid Ahmed Al-Zabi and the British Bahraini social media influencer and political analyst Amjad Tahar.
I've listened to some of the comments you've made. Why is it that you believe there are more radical Islamists in a place like Britain than there is in your own country?
The question is, why is it that when a Muslim lives in Dubai, he's more liberal, but when a Muslim lives in London, he's more extremist? Why is it that you have the fact that if an Orthodox Jew, after the 7th of October, still wanted to walk in the street of Dubai, Abu Dhabi, anywhere in the UAE after the 7th of October, he actually identified himself as a Jew and wears his kippah or Orthodox identity. Yet he cannot do that in various areas in Birmingham, for example, in Small Heath, in Sparkbrook, in various areas in UK. This should be questioned. It's not a matter of freedom of speech. It's the fact that people in Britain have reached a moment where they cannot express their perspective, their opinion at any stage, at any point, in the name of the fact that they censor them under the umbrella of Islamophobia.
How can they so clearly see a problem that our politicians completely ignore?
When you speak to a British person at this stage, at this point, they always look at yesterday and they don't tell you about tomorrow. They're scared of tomorrow. When they want to look into the light, they look at yesterday, not today. And this is a Britain where Britain message was always tomorrow.
Yes.
The time for talk is over. We have to start getting excited about tomorrow, but we need some action men to do it. One of them is the UKIP leader, Nick Tenconi, who's here now. Nick, great to have you back on Outspoken. Does this civil war within Reform UK give UKIP an opportunity, or is this just a completely unnecessary splintering of the right?
So thanks as always for having me on, Dan. God bless you. Great to be here. The reform debacle, or the 100th nail in the coffin, is hugely beneficial to UKIP with regards to people seeing the purple light and coming home to a nationalist, patriotic, Christian nationalist, socially conservative, whatever you want to call it, common sense party. There's a flip side, however, to that coin. There is an operation underway at the moment by our government, by the Uniparty, by our institutions, by the deep state, and by controlled opposition and Home Office plants and MI5 assets to demoralize and to denigrate and to demotivate the entire patriotic right. So every single time reform behaves like this, yes, great news for UKIP, of course, but I don't want the British public any more heartbroken than they've already been by the Uni Party, by various traitors in the Conservative Party, by the Conservative Party in general, and by the various atrocities, terror attacks, massacres. It affects us all. It doesn't just affect the families, it affects us all, because eventually it's your child or it's your friend or it's someone that you know, for example. So we have had our hearts broken. And I want to say to your viewers, my perspective is that when you have your heart broken, typically that is a pathway to having your heart hardened. And this is incredibly dangerous territory. We don't want hearts hardened. We want happy, lifted, positive, energetic hearts saying, we understand the only way out of this mess is to back a political party and in a first past the post system to return a majority in government. That way you get your country back. We want people feeling happy and positive amongst the chaos and the madness and the horror. We want people feeling inspired, motivated, understanding that love is duty and duty is love, and collectively we're taking our country back. So when reform behaves like this, there's two sides to the coin.
Nick, I'm just looking over your shoulder and you have a poster there that reads detentions, deportations, and then there's that critical word that Farage and Zia Yusuf have moved away from, re-migration. Now, this is the key issue, isn't it? This is the key split, because Rupert Lowe would be with you on that, but Reform UK say you've gone way too far. Like, they say you're insane for suggesting that you want to boot David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, out of the country, for example. So can you just clarify, Nick, exactly what you mean when you say re-migration from a UKIP policy point of view?
Yeah, certainly. So this is, as ever, Dan, you've asked the right question, and God bless all the podcasters and commentators who are asking the right question. To answer it, you have to work backwards. So that means starting with re-migration and then talking about, for example, foreign nationals in our jails, those who are claiming welfare, who are on visas, those who are here illegally, who are stored in our hotels and in wider society that are being harbored by the Pakistani and Bangladeshi community. We'll come on to that. So re-migration is the opposite of immigration. So we're challenging the entire narrative around the utility, purpose, and efficacy of the idea of immigration, i.e. it's fantastic to go and visit other cultures. It's fantastic to go on this thing called a holiday where you go and see all that, spend your money, boost the economy, then you come home. There's nothing wrong with that premise. So no one voted for mass uncontrolled immigration. So the whole narrative around immigration is being challenged. That's the predicate for talking about re-migration. So the question becomes, well, what does it mean? It means we're sending those people home who do not deserve to be in Britain. So who? Those who can't speak English, those who are here to subvert British culture and Christianity, those who are here as part of a organized Islamic caliphate, Saudi-backed operation, those who are here to join prescribed or support prescribed terrorist organization, those who are here to form sectarian cliques, cults, gangs, whatever you want to call it, etc. Those who are here to spread the caliphate. So the question becomes, most common sense people would say, well, that makes sense, but that's just deportations then. No, these people were born here. They have British citizenship. So you go into citizenship deprivation,
Yes,
where you
because David Lammy, of
them
course,
their
born in Tottenham, I think.
Yeah, so this is absolutely fundamental. So I'm working backwards. I'll talk about mass deportations. So your liberals won't go anywhere near mass deportations. And then you've got your extreme right, awful, vile sector that they are, which say anyone who's not white needs to go. And then you've got the common sense patriotic right, which says, as I've just listed, if you are part of those unintegrated migrant communities who are here to spread the caliphate, just one example out of many, you're going home. Does it matter that you've got a British passport? No, you'll be stripped of your citizenship. And a classic example of this is Shamina Begum. Now, moving from that to mass deportations, this is much easier to explain. If you are here illegally, so the 100K in our hotels, they're already detained. They would be removed and put to the nearest port or airport where they're sending home. Those who are here on visas, so at the moment we've got about 1.6 million here on a visa claiming welfare, costing 21 billion a year. It is utter nonsense. We know where they are because they're on welfare. So the Home Office knows where they are, Job Seek, Job Centre, etc. We know where they are. Then there's the 1.2 million forecasted illegals in the country. More problematic, but they're propping up the Deliveroo economy. So we know they're in the car washes. We know they're delivering food. We know they're on the e-bikes. We know they're loitering around. They're in tent cities like in Paddington and all the other ones that are popping up across the UK. We know they're in the nail salons. We know where these people are. And they're also being harboured, this 1.2 million suspected illegals. We're talking about legals, illegal. We know they're being harboured by the Pakistani, Bangladeshi and other such Middle Eastern and Asian communities. Where does everyone think that these people are? They're being harbored. Now, I personally know that, but lots of other people know that as well. So from remigration, which is a very sensitive subject that alerts some people and causes a bit of anxiety, which is perfectly normal, once you talk through the process, that those who are here to rape, butcher, murder, those who are here to subvert our culture, regardless of their citizenship, they're going home. And then in the middle, if you like, the deportations angle, that's to do with those who are here, who are net receivers, not net contributors, who aren't British citizens. They're on visas. And then, of course, you've got your illegals, which is a very basic premise to understand, and no one would disagree with you. We know where they are. They're illegal. They're criminals. They're going home.
What do you think, Nick, in terms of Rupert Lowe? For example, would you be prepared to give up the leadership or share the leadership of UKIP if he was prepared to be a UKIP MP in Parliament, for example? I'm just thinking that would be such a massive boost for UKIP, wouldn't it?
So I think the question most commonly put with regards to both Rupert and Ben Habib is, would I step aside for them to become leaders? So first and foremost, UKIP has been through an absolutely tumultuous time with regards to leadership races. I wouldn't put the members through that. It also costs a lot of money as well. We are stable. We are moving in the right direction. Policies, missions, manifesto, our online graphics campaign, our street level activism, our candidate list is growing by the day. Our membership is shooting through the roof. Rupert has also proved to what the utility is of activism in politics, with his freedom of information requests and calling out various, his tweets are quite good. He's obviously got a certain style there, but he's also done it. I think it's 1,000 questions. There was a tweet the other day that went up. He's making the most of his time in PMQs. I was the one who called it out when they returned 4 MPs. This is not a win. This is not a result for reform. Nigel's got 40 years of experience, endless media sensationalism, never gets banned off TikTok. That's a question mark.
Which has just happened to you, right?
Yeah, that's right. You know,
shameful.
Again,
shameful.
Nigel calls out the problem, but he doesn't say the solution. So again, is he a plant? Is he controlled opposition? How does he get away with all this? 1.2 million followers on TikTok, and he's completely untouchable. So Rupert, good guy. Everyone's seen the video. You were kind enough to put that in front of him. Have I heard back? No. And I just want to link that to your last point about stepping aside for the leadership. Logistically and practically, ethically and morally, that isn't the right thing to do. We'd also want these guys to carry on doing what they're doing. Running a party, as everyone knows who's in the know, is 24 hours a day. But here's the thing. In one breath, the rights say we need to unite and put our egos to one side. And in the next breath, there's obviously the suggestion about making Rupert leader. It's like, which one is it? We're doing great as we are. My hand's extended to all those good people and everyone who's got a big social media following, or who's in politics, or who's expressed interest in wanting to save their country, is going to be hearing from me as part of stage 2 at UKIP, whereby I reach out to them and say, if we're not taking our country back, guys, who's going to do it? Because we're going to stand 650.
And that includes Tommy Robinson and Katie Hopkins, right? I know you've said that here on Outspoken before, but I think it's worth asking you again.
Yeah, certainly. That's absolutely right. So we're finishing up stage 1 at UKIP as I go into my month 9-ish. Stage 2 is going to begin, which is all to do with training and developing our activists and our candidates, etc. I mean, very exciting time that I hope to be speaking more about with you and other good people on various shows. But a huge part of that stage 2 is pitching my target list, of which there's a few hundred names on there.
Do you think you've been blacklisted?
That some will say no.
Do you think you've been blacklisted by the mainstream media, Nick? I mean, for example, I never see you on GB News or Talk. Have they asked you on?
No, they haven't asked me on. Have I been blacklisted? Probably, Dan. I think this is nothing new. You know, we're talking about Christian nationalism. They don't know how to deal with it. I think they fear me. I really do. I think they fear my ability to deconstruct their nonsense. If they don't play a straight bat, I think they fear my ability to deconstruct their nonsense and to alert the British public. And in alerting them to the facts and figures and the correct rhetoric, that therefore inspires and motivates them. Why would the mainstream media want to give me that power? They don't. That's why it's so important that the new media, or the rise of independent media, which I include you in, the work you do is absolutely critical and is absolutely essential to our victory in 29.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, maybe that's not a surprise, but we have seen it happen in the USA, and we are so far behind, but we do have 4 years in which we can catch up. Breaking right now, fallout after an extraordinary confrontation between the outspoken US Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, MTG, I am a big fan, and the corrupt and crooked Sly News in the UK. What I love is that she had clearly never heard of Martha Kellner, the typical legacy media stooge in Washington, D.C., but immediately, as she started to go for Marjorie Taylor Greene over the signal link, in the US, immediately MTG had her measure. This is how politicians need to deal with the corrupt mainstream media in the UK. I'm going to analyse with UKIP leader Nick Tenconi shortly, but first, it is really worth watching the full dramatic exchange.
Representative, another story that relates to the media today. Have you seen the new information revealed by The Atlantic magazine about the signal texts?
We're talking about NPR and PBS, not The Atlantic.
But do you believe that this was classified information that was shared on that group?
No, the administration has said it is not classified information. I think this is a continuance of someone like you to try to push an issue that isn't even relevant. And I think that we're carrying on. Thank you.
Detail of timings and weapons, is that not classified information?
Yes. Anybody else?
Should the Defence Secretary and the Vice...
Wait, what country are you
from? The UK.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion and your reporting. Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
Okay, do you care?
No, you should care about your own borders.
Do you care about American lives being put at risk?
Let me tell you something. Do you care about people from your country? What about all the women that are raped by migrants?
Do you care about
American... No, do you care? Okay,
do you care about American lives being put at risk? About service members fighting for your country?
I don't care
and
about
your Vice President and your Defense Secretary?
Yeah, this is an American journalist. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm an American, and I'd like to hear your answer to what she's asked.
I'm not answering her question
All right,
because I don't care about her network. If you would like to ask.
Marjorie Taylor Greene asking questions of the British mainstream media that actually should shame them. And it did continue because, of course, the liberal American journalist tried to back up Sly News. Watch.
Disregard of operational security from the top level of this administration.
You want to know about complete disregard about operational security? You should talk about the Biden administration, how they ripped our borders open to terrorists, cartel, child sex trafficking, human trafficking, and drug trafficking across our borders for 4 years. The Trump administration is doing a great job, and I stand by their statements.
So you have
I
no
stand by their
comment
statements.
whatsoever about
My comment to you
this
is I'm
incompetence.
thankful to President Trump that he is leading us out of wars, that he's ending the war in Ukraine, where American lives could have been killed if Joe Biden was still president
talking about
today,
him
whether he liked it or not. We're talking about NPR and PBS today. We're talking about fake news that was funded with federal funding from American taxpayers. That's what this is about today, not journalists from the UK.
A journalist is being vilified for exposing failings in the way that your government conducts itself. Is that not that journalist doing a good job? Does Defence Secretary Hegseth need to resign over this, Representative?
Absolutely not. He's doing a great job.
He's doing a great job, but he was putting American service members' lives at risk.
Your country's going to put
This is
lives
deflect.
fighting a war in Ukraine that's not even a member of NATO.
Is this an exercise in deflection?
This should be an exercise in you worrying about your own country.
And Nick Tenconi, what's so fascinating about that is, of course, Martha Kellner and Sly News, they love it. They think, oh, we've had a win. Whereas actually, the UK, the British MSM, and actually just citizens, we should feel ashamed. And I do feel ashamed that Marjorie Taylor Greene is saying quite rightly, you legacy British media don't even give a damn about those tens of thousands of young girls who were raped on an industrial scale. And she is right.
Absolutely, Dan. The approach that the viral clip of Marjorie and what she's done, this is the epicenter of the nucleus. Hang on, where are you from? Right, you're from that. I'm not talking to you, and you're not going to put me on the back foot. I'm on the front foot. I'm ready to take my country back. I'm ready to fight. This is our war, the war we're in the West, in Europe, in the UK. This is a crusade. It's gone from being a culture war to a religious war. There's be under no illusion that's what this is. And the America First movement has produced politicians like MTG, like Trump, to say, I'm going to inspire the nation with bravery and with courage. The opportunity that Marjorie had to take the back seat and to be on the back foot and to allow deranged lefty questions to come to her. And of course, by definition, the lefty journalist is there to interfere with your train of thought. They're there without any scruples, morals, or principles. They're there typically as agitators, and they're very good. The left specialize in irritating you to elicit a response that makes you look in a certain way, typically negative. So, like the bullies in the school playground, this is activism 101. What do? You stand up to them. Zero nonsense. You're not putting me on the back foot. I'm putting you on the back foot. I'm going to make you look really silly. We're letting go of the boomer, conservative, hippie, communist, liberal, live and let live, love is love. No, we are at war. We've understood that. You've got to have your rhetoric good to go. And when you do that and you produce clips like that, you inspire hundreds of millions of people, tens of millions of people, however many people are watching it in Europe, in America, in the UK. You inspire people to rediscover your courage and your bravery to take your country back. Just fantastic.
Indeed. And the thing is, right, Sky News, or Sly News, as you know I call it, is a national embarrassment. But Nick, salvation is on the way. Because just like in the US, which has seen the complete destruction of the mainstream media, I mean, if you look at Inauguration Day, for example, CNN down 80% because finally people have woken up. It's the same thing. Sly News has had to admit that they can no longer be a terrestrial channel because people simply aren't watching. And there is a great democratization in the news. And actually, far more people will watch Marjorie Taylor Greene's takedown of Sly News than will actually watch content on Sly News. Their influence with the population is waning. The problem is, at the moment, the deep state are still addicted to these type of terrible people.
Certainly. So I think that the key issue when it comes to the deep state, the key issue to convey to viewers is that of cancel culture. You see, remember, the war we're in is no shots fired. So these lefty, globalist, communist-inspired globalist tactics are insidious. So it's the demoralization, it's the cancel culture, it's the clamping down on free speech, etc., etc. The more people that are watching programs like yours, the more people who are starting podcasts, the more people who are starting to influence via new media and via or online media, whatever you want to call it, the better. This is what the European right is doing. This is what we're doing in Britain. It takes time. Obviously, no one's saying this is an overnight campaign. People are understanding from what's left of the war generation, the boomer generation. You can see it. You got to be in the comment section on not just X, but Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok. You got to speak to your relatives, speak to your family. You'll find out slowly but surely, everyone is waking up to the fact that there is a massive coup underway to reject mainstream media in its totality. And the wicked irony is, Dan, that once that happens, you'll see that the masters of the mainstream media, you'll see them change their tune. Because it's all about consumerism, it's all about the numbers, it's all about the cash. So you'll see that shift happen, not to mention politically as well. But that's as a result of us saying this all ends when we say it ends.
And UKIP has always been really strong in terms of its media policy. Have you set for this next campaign BBC decision, for example, will the British Bashing Corporation be totally defunded under you?
Certainly.
Good.
Yeah. So this is one of the easier questions to answer, and this is what we mean when we say we're returning justice, delivering justice to the British public. It's not just the traitors, certain people who have acted in certain ways, but also our institutions have been captured, or delivering justice back to the British people. How much injustice is the BBC responsible for as an institution that's funded? Let's start calling it what it is, same way as we do with migrant terrorism. It is a form of terrorism. It's domestic terrorism to subvert British culture, to demoralize us, to run various psyops. We could talk about that on this show now. I know there's a couple of points coming up that I could certainly use that word psyop. Again, to demoralize, to denigrate. To ensure that free speech isn't allowed, to go after certain people in a persecutory fashion, like Tommy Robinson, for example. And these people are terrorists. That's the sort of language and rhetoric we need to start using. Zero tolerance policy. We're taking our country back.
And Nick, how shocking is it that the real fair coverage of Tommy Robinson has actually come from some of the biggest names in the conservative media in the US? Jordan Peterson, Ann Coulter, they are the sorts of people who have for some time realized that Tommy Robinson is a political prisoner, and they don't give a damn if people criticize them in the UK.
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting. So for your viewers, we all know it's day 183. I don't know. I don't have a tally, but we're talking about a man who's in solitary confinement for telling the truth. We're talking about a man who decided he was going to tell his side of the story. He was going to say, this is what's happened to me, and I'm going to make you aware of it. I'm going to exercise my right to freedom of speech on this particularly very obscure story for your viewers who have seen the documentary and understand the ins and outs of it. This man has committed what we call no serious offense. No one, I think the last person to go to jail for the contempt of court here in the context that it's in was in the 60s or the 70s. You probably might recall it. I've noted it before, but it's unheard of. This man is in solitary confinement to protect protect him from radical Islamists, to protect him from jihadi Muslims, to protect him from psychopath Islamists. That's an awful long time to be in solitary confinement for what most of us would call a non-crime. And where's the support from the political base? Where's the support from the mainstream media? Guys, the enemy is within. Every single one of us is going to have to take a leaf out of the likes of Tommy Robinson's playbook and go, if we don't become political activists, if we don't exert bravery and courage and understand our duty, if we don't get political and every one of us becomes an activist, we're not going to get our country back. Britain's been a far left fascist state for a very long time, no shots fired. That's going to continue. That's not going to stop. And eventually the Islamic Caliphate, by definition, will take over. It's time to get active, guys.
Have you noticed that British politicians, especially those on the left, are more than happy to talk about the Netflix drama Adolescence, which demonizes young white boys? More than happy to talk about that as if it's a real documentary rather than a made-up drama where the main character's ethnicity was actually changed. But they completely ignore two young British women called Lily Phillips and Bonnie Blue, whose degenerate behaviour is unfortunately now a very obviously bad influence for young British women and spreads a narrative that white British women are available for other ethnic groups. Now, Bonnie Blue and Lily Phillips are young women who are making a heck of a lot of money, almost disgusting amounts of money for what is effectively pornography. And they're getting a lot of attention doing it too. Nick Tenconi, the UKIP leader, and I will show you his call in just a moment, believes that these two women should be sectioned and arrested. He is the first British politician to speak publicly against these two women, and perhaps there is good reason to do so. For example, and I will show you the footage, don't worry, it's nothing X-rated, but just so you can see the sorts of lengths that these women are going to for attention. Bonnie Blue this week attended an NBA game in Miami. It was the Miami Heat against the Rockets with a drill rapper called Little Mabou. And look at the antics, the despicable antics these two got up to.
Wait, before you do that though, do you not think I'll be able to get the 10 black kids from here?
55, Duncan Robinson is second. Team second.
Do you not think
Right.
Yo, do you want her? Yo, Thompson. You Thompson, you want her?
Here's what Nick Tenconi at the weekend called to happen to both Bonnie Blue and Lily Phillips. This is an interview with Rebel News.
Cyril Smith.
You spoke about Andrew Tate and influencing young boys. There's also a lot of talk about the female prostitute Bonnie Blue and influencing young girls. What's your thoughts on her?
Sure. So Bonnie Blue and Lily Phillips need to be arrested and sectioned for their own sake and for the sake of the British public. So at the exact same time, let's list it, at the exact same time that we're at the height of the grooming gang and the paedophile Pakistani grooming gang mafia and the paedophile Pakistani grooming gang mafia, at the height of that conversation due to Elon Musk and international notoriety, we also have two white girls making sure they go viral having sex with multiple migrant men. At the same time, we see Easter being shut down in schools for the sake of religious tolerance. At the same time, we see a Netflix documentary based on a man of color, a boy or a man of color, who perform the most heinous, most despicable, indescribable of crimes portrayed as a white lad. It's an attack on whiteness. It's an attack on the British people. Lily Phillips, Bonnie Blue, flying the flag to say, essentially, welcome more migrants in. These are the good guys. We're choosing it. We deserve it. Is it a psyop? I'll let you guys decide whether it is or not. They need to be arrested and sectioned. Who behaves like that? Who behaves like that? It is all to do with watering down our culture. It is all to do with denigrating Christianity. It is all to do with saying that we are good for the taking. You can behave however you like. We've descended into degeneracy. What message is that sending to young boys and girls whose parents have completely lost control of them? It's got to be stopped.
Thank you for your time.
And Nick Tenconi, given the risk that young white girls are under as a result of the Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs, there is a disturbing undertone to what Lily Phillips and Bonnie Blue do that isn't spoken about much, okay? But let's go there because it matters. And it is the fact when they put on these, I mean, I hate to even say the word, but these sort of huge orgies where, 100 or 1,000 young men come and apparently sleep with them in one day. The vast majority are non-white.
Yeah. So this is very difficult to talk about, but we're going to talk about it, and it's vile. It's absolutely vile. So look, let's start calling it what it is. That's the plan. We're taking our country back. It's they do need to be arrested and sectioned. Are the British? There's a tweet that's going around. So apparently Bonnie Blue is getting engaged to a guy, and he's taken to social media with her asleep next to him with a Cartier ring. And I'm not going to repeat it. I'm not going to say it. But basically, the caption says, "Her body's yours, but her heart belongs to mine." Now, where do we start with this? On one side of the coin, with regards to the Phillips Blue situation, on one side of the coin, this is the hippie period. This is the 1960s. I wasn't there. Was it as bad back then? I don't know. But let's just call it what it is. It's liberalism on steroids. These girls are on record as saying their families do their accounts, they do their books for them. We know that Bonnie Blue will happily go to a car showroom. She's had a new car made up recently, and then there's the garage and the guys, they're all clapping and cheering. There's so many people that are in on this. Are we to believe that these two girls just went, I know, let's go and give this a go? Or are we to believe that it's government backed? This is domestic terrorism. Let's just start calling it what it is. It's all part of the continued never-ending effort to denigrate Christianity, to destroy and weaken masculinity, and to go against all the principles of what we're taught in the Bible and by the early church fathers, to abstain, to fast, to pray. When we talk about cultural values in the UK, that phrase is thrown around by non-practicing, non-Christians, secular liberals all the time. But let's start saying it as it is. Do we honestly think, going back to those two sides of the coin, do we honestly think that this is just liberalism? Do we honestly think this is just secularism? This is the price you pay. Remember, love is love, don't interfere. Or are we to think now, actually, this is a concerted effort by the government? It is domestic terrorism, but on what? It's the only category that it comes under is to denigrate Christianity, is to denigrate the nuclear family, is to denigrate and destroy masculinity. That is absolutely clear to me. It is a concerted effort specifically at Holy Mother Church, at Christianity, at masculinity, to weaken us, to emasculate us, to cuck us. This is all part of the same thing. Masculinity and femininity for centuries have complemented each other, equally as special, equally as sacred. What we're witnessing is a direct attack on masculinity via pornography, prostitution, degeneracy. Now, on one side of the coin, maybe it's just fluke and they're just two capitalists enjoying liberalism. or it's a concerted effort by the government. It's domestic terrorism.
And then, Nick, you get this Netflix show Adolescence, right? Which, don't get me wrong, it's a very compelling drama if you just want to watch it as a work of fiction. But again, I would say there's a psyop behind this show because it has been raised in Parliament. There have been suggestions that it should be played in every school, that it should be played to every MP. When Slippery Starmer, the failed Prime Minister, got up on his feet, he actually described it as a documentary instead of a drama. And of course, we know that the main character in this show, Nick, was based on a young black boy who stabbed a teenage girl to death. But in the show, it was changed to a young white boy. Now, again, I have no problems with it as a piece of drama, but isn't it the fact that it is being used now to demonize young white boys who are not the problem statistically, especially not young white boys who come from a loving nuclear family, as was the case in this show?
Yeah, certainly. So you've got an advert, which I presume is bought and paid for by Transport for London, of a white kid who is behaving very, very inappropriately. They've made him act it so that he's very slimy, he's very sleazy. He's not necessarily attacking anyone. I'm sure you've seen it. It's I believe it's TFL sponsored. And that, I think, was maybe even last year. So when you see that and you see just how awful the character is playing the role and how he's trying to deliberately intimidate women, when you see that, nothing about it seems organic, nothing about it seems genuine. And I'm not just talking about the fact that we're engulfed and surrounded by migrant rape, migrant murder, migrant terrorism, migrant subversion of our culture, the Islamic Caliphate. I'm parking all of that. Then we look at the Adolescence documentary. As you've said, Dan, the perpetrator was a black kid. Now, that's my understanding of it. And they've portrayed him as a white kid. This is a deliberate attempt. Someone somewhere, again, is pulling the strings to allow politicians across our governments, across our nations, to give them their Reichstag moment. It's to give them that moment where they can go, right, whiteness is a huge problem. White males are a huge problem. White Christian males are a huge problem. White heterosexual Christian males, whatever. It gives them an opportunity to say, let's denigrate, demoralize, demotivate, and go after this particular section of society. Meanwhile, we jump on any social media platform, and once again, we'll see a group of migrants or a group of black kids running around hacking each other to death with machetes, or we'll see black girls in American high schools beating half to death white girls. So what we see is that there is clearly a problem in liberal Western democracies with regards to knife crime, with regards to violence, with regards to, it all stems from godlessness, which can be auto-corrected. But when you see a designated campaign against white people, then we've got to start calling out the racism. You've got to start saying you're doing this deliberately to, again, emasculate, demoralize, and demotivate. Now, it is exhausting to talk about this particular aspect. Whilst we witness the great replacement theory and the fact that our whiteness is being replaced, which is racism in the UK, we also have to endure these concerted, choreographed attacks specifically on typically white Christian straight males. Let's not forget the straight and the Christian bit. It's not just white males, and really the most affected are going to be the youth, the white young men who are our future leaders, our future fighters, our future warriors, our future politicians, engineers, publicans, whatever you want to call it. These guys are getting a really hard time of it, and they're being told to shut up for the sake of diversity, just like those despicable Labour MPs did when our native British girls were being caught up in a rape genocide, and they were told to shut up for the sake of diversity. I quake with rage. We've got to take our country back. We've got to get politically active. We've got to take our country back.
Indeed, we do. Now, look, stand by, Nick Tenconi, because speaking of the persecution of good Christian men, unfortunately, we have quite a tale to tell in just 1 minute. the first interview with Reverend Canon Father Phil Harris after his shocking cancellation because he called out Slippery Starmer for his lies over the Southport Massacre. The full shocking story coming up in the Uncancelled interview in just one moment, so don't go anywhere. But first, you know I never recommend anything unless I truly believe in it, and today I've got something absolutely game-changing for you. Have you ever stopped to think about how crucial comfort is, especially down there? Well, let me tell you, today's Outspoken is proudly sponsored by Sheath Underwear, the revolutionary brand shaking up men's comfort across the globe. And here's what makes it even better. Sheath was founded by an amazing US Army veteran, Robert Peston, while he was serving in Iraq back in 2007. So that's right, this isn't just any underwear brand. It was designed for the toughest conditions imaginable. Peston was battling relentless heat and discomfort in full combat gear, and he thought there has to be a better way. So he created it. And let's be honest, traditional underwear just doesn't cut it anymore. Sheath's innovative dual pouch design ensures your comfort all day long, keeping things separate, cool, and fresh. Just imagine your essentials being comfortably cradled away from unwanted friction and heat. Trust me, it is genuinely transformative. I've personally tested these at the gym, on long days at work, even just relaxing at home, and I'm telling you, once you've experienced Sheath, there is simply no turning back. They're stylish, they're supportive, and they deliver unmatched comfort. It's like upgrading from economy to first class, but for your underwear. And right now I'm offering you an exclusive 20% discount at sheath.com. Yes, that's 20% off your entire order when you use my special promo code Outspoken at checkout. So what are you waiting for? Sheath, by the way, is the perfect present for your husband, your boyfriend, your son, your brother, your hard-to-buy-for best mate. And ladies, good news, there are female versions too. I also want to tell you that Sheath, because this is really cool, Sheath is the first official underwear of the UFC. I thought you would like to know that. So click on the link below, enter Outspoken at checkout, sheath.com, and then you can thank me later when you're feeling comfortable, confident, and ready to tackle anything the day throws at you. Sheath underwear, redefining comfort one pair at a time. But now, back to the show. And it's time for the Uncancelled interview. Following the persecution of Father Calvin Robinson, who was defrocked by the Anglican Catholic Church in the US on spurious grounds after imitating Elon Musk's infamous inauguration salute, the cancellation of religious figures in the UK has now begun. Today, I learned and reported exclusively on my Substack, www.outspoken.live, that Reverend Canon Father Phil Harris, a regular guest here on this show, has been brutally sacked from his role as minister at St. James's Church in the West Midlands. The church, by the way, he promised his dying father to protect, for which he served voluntarily and took no money, but succeeded in growing by 350%. And this cancellation was because of 2 social media posts that went viral all around the world, criticizing Slippery Starmer and Islam apologism. Now, his departure was forced after an investigation was launched by the Charity Commission. Surprise, surprise, this is like the off-communists, a quango that is part of the British deep state and is determined to shut down dissenting voices. Now, Father Phil Harris is going to join me very shortly alongside the UKIP leader, Nick Tenconi, for his first interview. But what I want to do first, because this is so important, is show you the 2 viral videos. They were watched by millions of people across the world, that have resulted in Father Phil's cancellation, because I'm sure you will agree with me that he is speaking our language, the language of common sense. Watch.
Nearly 39 million people did not vote for you and are not interested in your policies. And yet you have the audacity and the propensity to insult the majority, the silent majority of our nation. Today there is an uprising across this once great nation as the political liberal elite have removed themselves and placed themselves above the people that they are supposed to serve. History tells us that this does not end well. History repeats itself. It has to, because nobody listens. In recent days, we have seen an army officer stabbed 12 times. We've seen riots in Leeds for 3 days where your government was incapable or unwilling to take action other than to return a vulnerable child to the family from whence the child was required to be removed for concerns over their well-being. 2 thugs violently assaulted 3 armed police officers in an airport, breaking the nose of a female officer, and they've not even been charged. Then riots in Rotherham for the same people who committed the assaults. 3 little girls were murdered. Let me say that again. 3 little girls were murdered at a holiday club. 10 were injured. And yet you allow the mainstream media to portray the mass murderer as a sweet choir boy.
I mean, what on earth is controversial about that? And do you remember it was part of this tongue-in-cheek movement, Far Right Thugs Unite? So that was the first video that the Charity Commission started investigating. This was the second.
So Keir Starmer, I am left frustrated and angry, like many of the citizens of this once great nation are, after your press conference regarding Southport yesterday. The anger has continued through headlines in the newspapers and the media today. Your obfuscation is beyond words. Let me say again that I am fuming at your far-right rhetoric towards me and the majority of this nation. Even journalists saw yesterday that your reasons for withholding information regarding Southport were nothing short of gaslighting. There is an endless precedent for the early release of the kind of information you and your government withheld, and none of it has ever led to trial collapse. Furthermore, you did not only withhold information, you allowed misinformation and disinformation to be peddled, and division was allowed to run riot.
And Father Phil Harris joins me now for his first interview alongside the UKIP leader, Nick Tenconi. Father Phil, firstly, I am so sorry that you are going through this type of cancellation. It is despicable. It is disgusting. We know that this is what the deep state, and by the way, I put the Charity Commission as part of the deep state. They are a quango. This is what they do to try and silence dissenting voices. You've seen it happen with me. You've seen it happen with Nick. Unfortunately, now they have come for you. But can you just explain something that you told me when we spoke off camera earlier in the week? How you believe that releasing these videos is actually a key part of what you are required to do as a man of faith.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting. Thanks for your kind words, and thanks for your support, Dan. Really do appreciate that. To answer your first part, the last 3.5 weeks have probably been the worst 3.5 weeks of 40 years of pastoral ministry in some shape or form.
Awful.
Just like the actual whole shock of this, it's just been horrendous.
Being cancelled, Jordan Peterson says that the only thing in life that is worse than being cancelled is receiving a terminal illness diagnosis. And the pictures we're showing, by the way, Father Phil, for people who don't know, are your new church. You've had to go and set up to worship in a pub because you're determined to do it. But we'll come to that. But sorry, you go on. I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, just in the context of that, a clergy friend. So I'm a priest in the Anglican Church of North America, which means that my holy orders, which are validly Anglican, are recognised in the UK because I am an Anglican priest, but it means that I'm not under the Church of England. And a number of people are asking that on Twitter at the moment. I'm not a Church of England priest. I left the Church of England in 2009, and my license since 2013 has been held in the United States. But I had one of my colleagues from the States call me up and say, I'm really sorry, Canon, for what's happened. And he talked to me about disaffirmation. And you mentioned Jordan Peterson there and his kind of comments. And I think that this was really horrendous. And Ruth, my wife, was actually with me at the time. So if you think about affirmation, what this has been about for me, it really is disaffirmation. You know, we've been disaffirmed, and that's been kind of quite horrendous. However, when you're ordained as a priest, your charge is actually to contend, is first of all to a priest in the Church of God, to a clerk in holy orders. Secondary is the jurisdiction that you are actually serving in. And so my responsibility is to actually speak out against unrighteousness and speak out for righteousness and to hold people to account in society. And so, you know, we can actually look at Augustine of Hippo and John Chrysostom and Basil the Great, who all spoke out about ills. And obviously we can go back to the prophets of the Old Testament, and we can go to Jesus himself, and we can go to St. Peter and St. Paul, who we have a responsibility to stand up for those who are disaffected in society. And the church has stopped doing that. The church has lost its testicular fortitude, for want of a better phrase, to actually stand up for what is right.
Oh, yes. Someone who does have balls is alongside us today, the UKIP leader, Nick Tenconi. But Nick, you talk about the complete war against Christianity in the United Kingdom. This has to be one of the most shocking examples. Clearly politically motivated, right? Because Father Phil had the temerity to speak out against Starmer's revolting cover-up.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've taken the time to speak to Father today. It's very good of him so that I could understand more. This is not going anywhere. For your viewers, this is not going anywhere. The outrage, the disgust, it will just keep coming. We've got to convert it into returning a majority at a general election and reinstating Christianity back into the heart of government. Now, obviously, I'll let Father tell the story, but I'd like us to understand more about what we mean when we say the deep state. What do we mean when we say our institutions have been captured? What do we mean when we say Quango or the third sector? So long story short, we've got a guy called David Holdsworth, who's the CEO of the Charity Commission in the UK.
Yes, he's nominated for Union Jackass today.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to go on and speak about David. So for your viewers, we've got a guy called Orlando Fraser, KC, who's the chairman apparently, and we've got a CEO called David Holdsworth. So what the Charity Commission are involved in when it comes to Christianity, and feel free to fact check my numbers. I'm not saying I'm right, but from my research, there are 40,000 churches in the UK. That sounds under, but let's just say there are 35,000 of them come under the remit of the Charity Commission. So my understanding is, for your viewers, if you are in bed with the Charity Commission and the Charity Commission say, we're closing your doors, this isn't working out, your status is revoked, maybe funding, Father could go on to tell you about it. When we say our institutions have been captured, the Charity Commission is fully captured. So then the question becomes, if that's made any sense, okay, Nick, so our institutions have been captured, so who's pulling the strings? Well, that's obviously a question which whistleblowers help us with, like Father, hopefully, and other people. We know there's a Saudi-backed operation and a Saudi-funded government, which is a soft jihad in the UK, but no one talks about that. They mentioned Qatar and they mentioned Kuwait. It's a Saudi-backed outfit in the UK. It's IRGC, it's Iran. You got to go to source on these things. How is Father in this position right now? And I'm sure he's going to tell the story. It's disgusting and it's outrageous, but we've got to take it back, guys.
Yes, because Father Phil, almost the moment that the church trustees were aware of this letter from the Charity Commission, they just folded, didn't they? They didn't try and defend you, really. They just panicked, and this is what happens. It's just like what GB News did to me, for example, with the off-communists. This is why these quangos are part of the deep state.
That's exactly what happened. So a charity that I'm a trustee of received a letter on the 5th of February. Same day, the church received exactly the same letter, inquiring if they were aware of my social media posts and wanting comment on them. The Christian Concern actually helped the charity, and they defended that, sent that defence back to the Charity Commission. The church panicked and basically folded. And I think the thing that's really heartbreaking for me is I would have defended and would defend every single one of those individuals passionately with my life. I would give my life for the church. That's what I'm called to do as a shepherd of the sheep, is to lay down my life for the sheep. And that's the stance that the great shepherd, the good shepherd, took to lay down his life to protect the sheep. And so what they did was just folded. Now, I need to give them one get out, which is the fact that most of them, well, all of them are elderly, and they were just shocked to have a letter from the Charity Commission. And that's where we come from, the weaponization. The realization for me, which is kind of quite scary, and those figures of Nick's are broadly right that he's just quoted. Very interestingly, the Charity Commission is wanting to have 35,000 extra charities in the next few years. Now, my question is, what are those charities? Are they Christian? Question mark. But I can have a license, as I did, for a church validly. And that license, allows me to administer the sacraments in that church. If, however, the Charity Commission come along and say that person is no longer allowed to be your minister, then we have a problem. So I can have a valid license from my bishop. And by the way, my bishops have been very supportive and are supportive. And I think, Dan, you've seen a statement from the bishops. However, you can have a valid license as a bishop, but if the Charity Commission decide that you can't work in that charity, that license is nothing, because ultimately, if it's a Charity Commission church, then I could not fulfill my role as a minister or a priest or rector of a church. And so I'd never seen this. And so the benefits of being a charity is we can apply for charitable funding. You can get gift aid, 25% gift aid. However, I'm just now considering, and you mentioned the new church, because literally the trustees that made this decision, and maybe 7 or 8 others, are the only ones left in the church, because the whole of my congregation backed me and said we need to do church elsewhere outside of the building. And by the way, I was locked out of the building. So we had the meeting, the trustees left, I locked up the church, all my ministerial recruitments, my robes, my books were in the vestry of the church. My deacon was with me, and he just saw how devastated I was. And I kind of put a message out to the WhatsApp group. And there's a picture of me praying for Father Francis in 2017 at Vatican City, in the Apostolic Palace. But he saw how upset I was, and he said, look, let's deal with this another day. And so we left, and I put a message on the church WhatsApp group saying how disappointed I was. And again, Dan, I think you've seen that message, and it was very conciliatory, just outlined the facts. And the WhatsApp group blew up. And I thought, whilst I've been away in the States, there'd been some sort of meeting that had happened. And of course, there'd been no meeting. This was just the charity trustees acting arbitrarily on their own. And so they made the decision. The WhatsApp group blew up. All of the congregation was supporting me. The next thing is the WhatsApp group. I'm removed from the WhatsApp group as the administrator by one of the trustees. And then I'm removed from the WhatsApp group. And then she locked the WhatsApp group so nobody else could comment. And then the church start contacting me, and this is on the Monday. This happened. It went through the Tuesday, and then we had to find a new place of worship, which happened to be Cradley Heath Sports and Social Club. So if you're around the Black Country, Birmingham, and there we are celebrating Mass. We had the first week 30 people ish in the Sports and Social Club. The Sports and Social Club love the fact we're there. They love the fact there's a father walking around in a cassock, and that they can come and talk to us. And so that's been a big win. You know,
and you intend to keep worshipping.
Oh, absolutely. So what we did, so we were during COVID. For those that know me, because churches were closed, and don't get me going on that one. We formed an online parish church called St Jude and St James, and people around my Twitter see that I promote it each Sunday, and we did online church, and that online church still runs. Now, the St James bit was the nod to my dad, because he was the minister of St James at the time. And St Jude is the patron saint of hope, and just through COVID, people had lost hope and were unhappy. And so St Jude and St James was birthed. So what we've actually done now is set up a new church, which is St Jude and St James. So it's St James that cancelled me and locked me out the church, which, the following day I went back to get my accoutrements and my robes and my camera equipment, and I couldn't get into the church. They changed the locks. And that's when everybody kind of went utterly ballistic. And so we're very upset. The church shouldn't behave this way at all. And, for people who are disaffected by the church, can I just say, I apologize for the way that we behave as church at times. I really do. And we should be better than this. The good news is that we're now meeting in the community, and we're looking for another building that we can purchase so we can continue church. I'm not so worried about myself. I'm worried about the people, the flock, who are disaffected by this. So, yes, if you are in the West Midlands, in and around the West Midlands, come to Cradley Heath and the Sports and Social Club there, 10:30 Sunday mornings, and we will be celebrating Mass again this Sunday morning.
Father Phil Harris, well, I love having you on Outspoken. You are certainly not cancelled here. Thank you so much for joining us for your first interview today. And thank you too to UKIP leader Nick Tenconi. You can read much more about the cancellation of Father Phil Harris by signing up totally free to my Substack today, www.outspoken.live. This is the best way to have direct communication with me, to protect me from cancellation from the mainstream media. I would very, very much appreciate it. www.outspoken.live. And as I say, if you signed up, you would have received in your inbox this exclusive, terrible story about the cancellation of Father Phil Harris, Reverend Canon Father Phil Harris, earlier today. Okay, lots of feedback coming in from you. Of course, it's all about the reform civil war. Teddy Taffy writes, when thinking about voting reform, think of Zia Yusuf as your prime minister. Because he will be. ... What a warning at the end. Satonian says, I think Yusuf isn't quite what he makes out. Alpha males don't get the police involved with in-house matters. Rupert Lowe is a decent guy. Maureen Roberts writes, Zia, stop lying. You and Nigel need to go join the Tory party. I won't be voting for your party again. Come on, the new party. Massive respect to Rupert Lowe, Ben Habib and Howard Cox. And Ken Lawrenson says, I've been warming to you, Mr. Wootton. Your piece with Rupert Lowe was fantastic. But when you think Marjorie Taylor Greene is someone whose views are relevant or make sense, then this is where we now part. Well, I certainly think she makes sense when it comes to Sly News. Not saying I agree with every single one of her policy positions, but in terms of her fight and her pluck, yeah, I love it. And I actually love the way that these American politicians just constantly taking down the MSM. Stop buying into their games. And that would be my big message, actually, to Nigel Farage and Reform UK. Okay, Union Jackass time. Let me remind you of the nominees. Sorry, there they are. So, the aforementioned David Holdsworth, the Chief Executive of the Charity Commission, nominated by Rose Juni. And of course, because he's behind that investigation into Father Phil Harris, insinuating he is some sort of far-right thug. Shabnam Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, nominated by It's Only Me 44 for softer laws on migrant criminals so the migrants could avoid deportation. And Meghan Markle, nominated by JFDTA for an AIM posting on Instagram. And of course, that stunt with Gwyneth Paltrow, which Lady C is going to talk about on the after show. The results are in with 9% of the vote, David Holdsworth, with 13% of the vote, Meghan Markle. But today's union jackass, Shabnam Mahmood, for her soft migrant laws. And what a perfect winner of Greatest Britain today. Father Phil Harris. It's gotta be him. Nominated by Mother Clanger. And she says Father Phil Harris, who, like Father Calvin, did not deserve to be cancelled for voicing what we all think. Congratulations, Father Phil. So you're inspiring. You're inspiring lots of people here. And you
I wasn't expecting that.
Well,
I'd taken my microphone off, Dan.
Oh, well, I'm glad you're still hanging around. Congratulations. You are our Greatest Britain today, Father Phil. You are not cancelled here on Outspoken, and please come back and join the Superstar
Dan,
panel very soon.
Could I do one shameless plug?
Please.
Which is,
please.
If you want to find me, go to St Jude and St James.church. That's ST Jude, AND stjames.church, and you can find us there, just as a shameless plug. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Father Phil. Our Greatest Britain today. Absolutely love it. Now do stand by. We're moving over to Substack now, www.outspoken.live. I'm just going to unleash Lady Colin Campbell on all the royal news because it has been kicking off. I'm desperate to hear from her. Absolutely desperate to hear from her. I know she's not going to hold back. www.outspoken.live. Sign up, join us. At this stage, we move off YouTube and Rumble to continue that conversation in the Uncancelled After Show. But don't worry, we are back tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK time, 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. Hit subscribe if you're watching on YouTube and Rumble. Most importantly, I promise to keep fighting for you. But we'll see you on the After Show on Substack in just a few moments.